Today I'm going to be attempting to replace the control arm bushings on a Volvo V70. So I've got the car up on axle stands and we'll start by removing the wheel. So with the wheel removed we can see what we're up against. We've got a bolt here, the rear side of the control arm. I'm just going to put a bit of penetrating fluid on it. And then we've got a couple here, and there is one underneath there. That's the outermost part, so I'll give that one a squirt. This actually is a 19mm nut, so when you're undoing this, because you're working upside down, you're going to be undoing it in a clockwise manner. So to the rear inner nut and bolt, we've got a 21mm spanner there and a breaker bar with an extension that leads to an 18mm impact socket, even though I'm not using an impact gun. So now we're underneath the car. We've got the sump there, and this is the right side, my driver's side one, and I've run into a couple of little problems which I've overcome. The first problem is for this bolt. We were struggling to get the ratchet in because of the sump, so I got around that and I just managed to get a bit of a turn on it. The second one, couldn't get the tool in correctly, so we've proceeded with a 15mm crank spanner, and I gave it a kick from underneath and it gently gave. So good news. You can see when we get to the near side of the vehicle, the left side, it's the two bolts there. It's a totally different story. It's going to be a lot easier for access. So now, after a bit of a wiggle, and actually used a jack to support this. I didn't actually jack it up, I just used it just to keep it in check. And I had to wiggle this bush out from the subframe there. And we've now got the control arm removed. So the MOT guy, I did actually replace the bushes in this with some rubber bushes which have turned out to be poor. The MOT guy said they're not really doing a lot, and I don't know if you can see the movement on that. I said there was too much movement in them, so I got an advisory, so that's why I'm now upgrading to the Powerflex bushes. So I've got to undo my work, unfortunately, for the greater good. Just to show you how worn they are, I've got this in the vise, as you can see. We can quite comfortably rotate round. They've only been fitted around a year. Press down with my hand and there's a horrific amount of movement, so he wasn't wrong. It was good of him to actually tell me rather than just keep quiet about it. So I'm going to remove them. One of my best tools which I bought was a push-pull bush kit, and we'll move over to the control arm. I've selected some cups of the appropriate size, just slightly smaller than what we're trying to push out. I think I might need one slightly larger than that actually. And then a receiving cup on the other side. I'm only doing this because these bushes have only been in a year, and I think I might have a chance of pushing them out. Ordinarily I would not use this kit, but I'm going to see how we go on this bush. So I've got it all set up, and I'm pleased to report there is some movement. You see these little windows here enable you to see what's going on. I'll try and demonstrate that. We're extracting the bush quite nicely. For the pin bush I'm going to have to do something totally different, but I thought this is probably the easier way out, given that these bushes were only installed less than a year, well, around a year ago. So this one's came out nicely. You will get a lot of corrosion. You may have to cut them with a hacksaw very carefully, taking great care not to damage the aluminium. Right, we're nearly through now, so happy days. It's got very easy to turn, so I'll remove that. And now we're on to the pin bush. When I removed the last one, I just managed to rotate the wishbone and it just tore apart, but I've had a quick go and I'm not going to be so lucky today. So what I'm going to do is drill the rubber to weaken it, hopefully. Well, I've drilled the rubber, still not playing, so what I've done is put it in the vise. You see the vise is resting on the old bush, so it shouldn't damage the control arm. And then as I tighten the vise, we're going to put a bit of stress on the pin and therefore the rubber to liberate it. Just after a quicker way of removing it, really. Well, while pushing the pin out, I managed to get a knife and cut quite a lot of the rubber. So now I can achieve a full rotation. Well, there's bits of rubber just dropping out at will from the cheap bushes. Well, in a bid to save some cutting, now I've got the pin out, I'm going to chance my arm using the push-pull bush kit. I've got the rear bolt nipped in the vise there, so I'm just going to see how the land lies. I may live to regret this. Put a bit of oil in there so it pushes it through. I've actually got to push the bush through in the reverse direction. That is actually slightly smaller, so that shouldn't get stuck. So we'll see how this works out. So I've managed to liberate the remnants of the pin bush. There were a moment where I wasn't sure if it were going to do it, but it did in the end. I had to push it in reverse. So, and if you do end up taking a hacksaw to remove your old bush, I would definitely cut there. This is considerably more metal that side than this side. Definitely put a line in there, and obviously you're going to do your best to avoid kissing the arm, but invariably it does happen. So I've done a bit of cleaning up in it, and before I get the bush out, I've actually got the bush in the freezer just to contract it slightly. I may have to do something here because the bush actually goes that way in, but it's something to secure it on. But what I'm going to do is take a measurement using the vernier. And then correlate that with the bush. 47.8, it's in that region. I'll treat that as approximate because we'll say 47 because it's a little bit variable. So we've got the Powerflex bush out the freezer, and you can see there's a step. I do actually like this. So I'm not going to mess around with it too much, but I've got another one in which I will get out fresh for the install because this is warming up as we speak. I'll zero the caliper. .48.2, so we're going to have to stretch the aluminium a mil to do it. So we now know what we're up against. The good thing about these is this pin will rotate in the bushing, so you don't have to worry about alignment. So this is the fit. I'll not go too deep because I may not be able to retrieve it. So it's actually locking on the first stage. So we'll think of something, think of a way to do that. So we're all cleaned up, and I was hoping to find a bit of tubing to go on the rear side, but no such luck. I've got this very large socket which I can put over the bush without doing any damage, and I'm going to have to just try and tap it in with a hammer. And there we have it, all installed. That took quite a lot of effort to push that in with a hammer and the large socket. A press would have been desirable. You can see the inner just rotate round, so that makes it easier to fit. With a conventional rubber bush, that pin is fixed in, so that's the advantage of the Powerflex bushes. Right, we'll do the other side. Yeah, what I've done is I've just got the assembly grease you get with it, just give it a bit of a coating, and then I put it in the vise just to give it a squish. It tends to try and want to jump out, so I'll just move the control arm round to catch it and control it. So I've got it started. I'll see if I can do it while filming. You can see the moment it goes in. They are very tough. And I think it needs to come out the other side. So using the vise and an enlarged cup from the push-pull bush set, we've managed to get that gone. You see the lip there, so if I relax the vise, everything should perhaps fall on the floor. Yeah, and it did. So we've got the lip, both sides, and now it's time to insert this steel tube in the bush. So we'll see how that goes. So that's all fitted now. I did actually manage just to squish it in the vise, the tube. The hard part's starting it tends to jump out. But one side of the tube here has got a tapered edge, so obviously push that edge in first. Use the taper as the advantage. Well, I've managed to wiggle that in. You can pull this out the way a little, but as you can see it's flexing the drive shaft gaiter, so just be wary of that. And I'm use my little rubber hammered persuader just to give it a few love taps, and in we go. It's good enough to bolt in. Well, I've got the first one fixed. Did actually have to use a tie lever, well, a lever, just in there, just for a bit of manoeuvring, just to align the bolt hole. I've actually took a wire brush to this and cleaned it all off, so I'm not retorquing it on a dirt underbody. So I've got the other one fixed in place. One tip is align the flat edge of that bar with the body of the car. It can be a bit fiddly to start, but I had to knock the pin a little bit with a rubber hammer, just a few little gentle taps to align it. Now for the tricky bit. What we've got to do is bend the wishbone down to align it to this ball joint. I've just spent quite a bit of time struggling here. You see I've got a ratchet strap there to the other side of the near side of the car, and then we bend the arm down, applying tension on that, and with the rubber bushes I fitted it was quite easy to do. I didn't really struggle, but they were substandard, and the problem is dropping the lower ball joint in here. It's locating it, so what I've had to do is take a secondary jack and just maybe jack up around an inch under the drop link at the anti-roll bar, and that's given me sufficient clearance to locate the lower ball joint, so I'm quite pleased with that. Okay, they've now got this side all bolted up and it's ready to go. One thing I would advise is during fitting you're going to maybe pull on this, just take the time to take the kinks out of it, just to prevent premature wear out the CV boot joint. Well, all I've got to do now is put the wheel back on. Something I wish to share with you if you're considering attempting this at home without a press. It's not for the faint-hearted. This is the second bushing on the other side, so I've put that in the freezer, and then this time I tried preheating this. I actually used a hairdryer because we can afford to heat it a little, but obviously we don't want to damage the actual bushing, and it's still lovely and cool. So I just want to let you know that I've had an easier time with this bushing than the previous one, so it's experience and I wish to share with you.